we had close to 100 plus sellers, and the plan always called for more heads, adding more sales reps, and that was the way for growth. And in that world, we were okay with the 80% quota attainment rate, and we live with that. We were dying by that. And now I think about our planning cycles and kind of working with sales. We want all our reps to be north of 100. The plan calls for that. The budget calls for that. There is no room for stragglers and low performers. And
All right, everybody, welcome back to this episode of the RevAmp podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Shivam Shah from Postscript, who's going to jam with us about some ideas around adaptability in revenue operations and some of the challenges that I think we all kind of face. Before we jump into it, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the folks at home, what you do, where you're from, how you got to where you're at.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Excited to be here. So I've been in RevOps now for almost 7 years. Started at an early stage fintech company based out of Toronto, and I actually started on the post-sale side first originally, and kind of was more focused on the expansion side of things and kind of creating that in the CS world. And then quickly realized, I had a profound love for sales and made my natural switch over to sales operations. And then here at Postscript, I kind of oversee the entire revenue operations team. So for marketing, sales, CS, the entire customer journey end to end kind of lives under me. And I have a solid team supporting me. And, we've done some great things, and we have a lot planned for this year. And yeah, excited to be here to chat through some of the topics that you have.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And, I think that the thing that probably resonates with pretty much anybody watching or listening is this idea that, we were in a time where the mantra was growth at all costs, right? Doesn't matter. Just get the next one. And that very quickly, swung to, scalable growth or,
Yeah.
whatever, kind of keyword you want to use for budgets are tighter. You have to do more with less, that kind of thing. That has been, I think, a challenge for some people. Some companies, I think, washed out as a result. They just couldn't kind of shift that focus, and they were, they couldn't cut burn, and they couldn't become more efficient. And I think for, the individual operators, the folks on the front line, that has been both a very difficult challenge, but also I think an opportunity to, capitalize on certain skills
Yeah.
or, learn something new. So I'm interested to hear from your perspective, kind of first, is this a trend that you've seen as well? And second, what are some of the challenges, especially from a RevOps perspective, and like how have you approached them?
Yeah, good question. So I would say, I'm used to coming from that world where, we had close to 100 plus sellers, and, the plan always called for more heads, adding more sales reps, and that was the way for growth. And, in that world, we were okay with the 80% quota attainment rate. And, we live with that. We were dying by that. And now I think about our planning cycles and kind of working with, sales. We want all our reps to be north of 100. The plan calls for that. The budget calls for that. There is no room for stragglers and low performers. And it's been challenging because I think, sellers, that I've experienced in my life and my career, we were at a point where you just had to sell to one person, and, we were ready to buy. We didn't really need approvals. And now it's like sellers, to your point, need a different skill set. You need to be able to find multiple contacts. Sometimes the buying committee is 3, 4, 5, 6 people. And sometimes the final decision maker is never in the room, which is the CFO. And here I would say we have a very nimble sales team, all high achievers, very well versed in e-commerce. And when I joined, we actually had plans to have close to double our sales team size. Market shifted, money was tighter, and the plan that we got was like, hey, you need to do more with what you got. And that's been the mantra everywhere, and it's tough. And somehow we've done it, like, but I think part of that has also been because we've really kind of focused. We narrowed our focus on like where we want to sell, really kind of haven't gone on after everything. We've kind of made sure we had the systems and, you know, data in place to tell our sellers when to walk away. And, I would say previously people weren't really walking away from selling. People were just eager to hit their quota. And now it's sort of like, hey, it's okay to walk away because we can ensure that you're going to be lined up with the next best deal. And I think part of that has been a lot of the work that RevOps has had to do now. We've had to become more efficient. You have to make sure you have the best tech stack. And by best, it doesn't mean having a gazillion tools. It's, are they all working together? Are they actually complementing each other? Or do you have tools that are just kind of siloed out? And that has been a journey for us. It wasn't easy. And look, we're not perfect, but I think we're definitely on the right path forward here. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of want to double click on that a little bit. There was definitely, I think, one of the first places people looked to find those efficiencies. One was unfortunately headcount, right?
yeah,
The other was in tech stack, right? I think that we were
yeah,
living in a time where everybody got whatever they wanted, their own bespoke tool that was very pinpointed just for their thing. And then, budgets and spending was gone through with a fine-tooth comb. So there was a lot of consolidation of tech
yeah.
stacks. Sounds like that was something that happened with you as well. What was that process like? What was your filter or your kind of decision rubric for what gets kept, what doesn't, and
Yeah.
how did it end up shaking out?
I mean, the easiest answer could be it started with cost, like what are our most expensive tools and what's the ROI on them? How is it helping us? How's it helping our ICs, our frontline go-to-market ICs? But I think part of it was also understanding what was our goal, like what was our North Star, where were we trying to get to? Because some tools, we've had for so long early on in our days, but we aren't that same company anymore. And yeah, like most RevOps professionals, you start to tweak tools, you start to stretch them beyond their limits. And, it's because you get comfortable. And I think one thing we've really done well here is take a look at our tech stack to understand, hey, if our goal, for example, is moving more up market, is this the right tech stack to support that? And if not, what do we need to get? And we sort of kind of went through which of the current tech stack would help us get us there, and which right now is more sort of like, for lack of better terms, tech debt, and like it's only going to continue. So we kind of mapped everything out by cost first, to be honest, like every other company, and then started understanding, hey, will this tech stack help us get us to our North Star or not? And if it's not, then it's sort of on the cut list. And how do we replace it with something better that's going to help us get us to our goals? Um, that was sort of the path we took. And then ultimately it was also great, gets us to our North Star, but all these targets that we've set out for each team, can it support that too? So it was, a very long process. I'm not, we're not completely done, but it's been a lot of discovery and a lot of findings for sure.
I'm actually interested to know broadly from other operators as well, but given that, there was this kind of great culling of tech tools, has it forced you or your team on the ops side to do more kind of internal tooling or focusing on kind of utilizing more kind of APIs or even low code, no code kind of thing to build internal tools?
Um, at times, yeah. I would say I'm kind of against that because that's sort of how you spiral into like tech debt, because now you have stuff living out there. You don't know where the source data is coming from, and you're just like, well, I can't validate this when someone else brings it. So don't get me wrong, we definitely have, thousands and millions of Google Sheets connected to all these data sources that we're pulling data from.
Yeah.
But I think what we've really done, like I said, is just really understand that, like, are we getting the best use of this tool? And what is it adding to our members from a from a from a value perspective, sorry. And then kind of going from there. But we really haven't kind of gone down the path of homegrown tools. if anything, we've kind of just, like I said, tweaked or extended tools beyond their existing use cases right now. So it's been kind of cool because, you know, again, a lot of these companies have been now talking to us like, oh, that's a cool product feature. Should we add it? We're like, well, yeah, it'd be great because like we had to do all this customization to make this happen. But I think we've just kind of extended tools from their, you know, I guess main use case to something else versus kind of building our own homegrown solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quite similar concept, right? So you're basically kind of Frankensteining something new out of an existing thing, but you know, as opposed to, you know, building it out of you know, Zapier or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, it sounds like, you know, a big piece of this was cutting tool sets and kind of consolidating and squeezing as much value out of each tool as you could. Was there what kind of things that had to change on like the operational and process side in order to obviously get more with less, right? You went from kind of being comfortable with 80% quota to requiring 100 plus per seller. What were the resources that you had to provide to those sellers in order to help them get there?
Yeah, I think it's something that is constantly top of mind, you know, is like, do we have the right things in place to help our teams focus? I think ultimately it's like you want your sales reps to be focusing on the right deal at the right time, and finding the buyer in the right moment too, right? And a lot of this can only be done with the right processes. So I'm a firm believer that, you know, don't buy tech to solve issues, solve the issue with a process first, and then find the tech to support that process, you know? And oftentimes, again, I think when money was free, tools were bought first and processes were never fixed, and you kind of were stuck in the same limbo. So I think what we've done here and done really well is kind of reevaluate our entire, I would call it, sales process, and made sure that, hey, do we feel that this process currently supports the motion that we're trying to go after? And if so, great. What are the improvements that we can make? Whether that's very tactical in a certain stage, for example, or is it from a more enablement perspective and working closely with enablement? But I would say every single process that we've had internally went under, you know, some sort of rigorous like deep dive of like, hey, is this working? Is it not? Because like I said, I just believe that if the process is not built correctly, you're not going to have the right tool, and you know you just got to trust the process at
Yeah.
the end of the day. So
Did did RevOps as an org have an impact on those decisions of the sales process? Or was it kind of the sales process was decided and then you had to build kind of the operational piece around it?
yeah, I would say it was mainly us leading the efforts to actually raise the discussion of like, hey, should we revisit our sales process? And I think it's something everywhere I've been, like I always try to revisit it every, you know, every so often to validate, hey, like we aren't the same company anymore and you know our motions are changing. Does this process support it? Because ultimately so much of our tooling is aligned to this sales process, right? The way that we're capturing data, the way that we're going to report on this data, like it's all tied to this fundamental sales process. So I would say everywhere I've been to, I've always advocate that, hey, every year or at least every, you know, 18 months, let's revisit it and adjust as needed. Because at the end of the day, like people want great reporting, and to have great reporting, you need a good process.
Yeah. I wanted to dive in on one point because you were saying that, you know, the sales process now, it's important that the sellers are kind of surface the potential sales that are likely to close, so
Yeah.
they don't waste their time. So, you know, when my ears kind of hear there's a sense of aligning it with some sort of signal detection
Yep.
intent data. Um, Also something I think that a lot of people are exploring, I'm not. I don't know if that's a relatively new phenomenon, but it seems almost everyone I've talked to has kind of said the same thing. How much has that played into how you're optimizing, you know, the quality of the sales prospect that the reps are talking to?
Yeah. One thing that we kind of made a big shift was we kind of relooked at our segmentation policies to kind of rethink, hey, how we're thinking about our prospects and what the value could be. Like most companies, you know, you usually start with either company size or company revenue and kind of dictates where you go, right? Here we kind of evolved a little bit because again, e-commerce is so different.
Right.
And we really kind of took a look at our customer base to really kind of inform our ideal customer profile. And everyone always talks about ideal customer profile, and but oftentimes like it's kind of looked at every now and then and sort of forgotten. And I think we did a really good job working with our product marketing team to kind of think through what does this ICP look like? Because once that was kind of set, again, we can then inform all of our systems on like, hey, this is what we're looking for. And we were also able to cut our territories with the new segmentation model that we came up with that was more aligned to our ICPs. And it doesn't mean that everything that's coming inbound or that we're outbounding to has been perfect. There's always going to be, the outliers that trickle in and kind of upset your sellers. But, we have a Slack channel with all of our reps, and we are getting definitely much less noise made about, oh, this person is not part of the segmentation model, right? Or this person is not going to be the minimum amount that we want them to be buying from us. So I would say we kind of went even farther back than just like tools and intent data. It was more so, hey, like we clearly have a lot of customers now. Let's actually look at them to inform who we want to be going after. And, even deeper into like what verticals we want to go after, right? Because the world we live in is e-commerce. There's a lot of verticals. There's a lot of shops in e-commerce, and we realize now like who we're going after and which ones actually are going to be profitable for us versus vice versa. When your early growth, early stage, you're just kind of going after everything that is going to be is raising their hand.
When you are doing that, going back and looking at your existing customers, was there any sort of machine learning, applied to that, where it was kind of saying this is the ideal profile?
Yeah, I wish we
Right.
had that, not gonna lie. It was definitely a good partnership with us, finance, BI, and um, there's just we are lucky that there's just a lot of product analytics data that we had that we can absorb that helped with this process. I would say other places I've been at, we just didn't have that. So it was more so looking at just firmographic data, which, is helpful, but it is still firmographic. It's not validated. Here, we just have so much data that we have access to that it was on us to kind of figure it out, no doubt. But I wish we had some sort of machine learning system to kind of help inform us of our ideal customers.
Yeah. So I want to shift a little bit because we're kind of using this word adaptability from a personal perspective. Obviously, we've kind of weathered several storms over the last
Yeah.
over many years, right? Professionally, I think we all experienced it as COVID, and then during, after, and all of the things that happened and are still happening. And I think this adaptability thing is very useful as a personal, professional kind of mantra. But for the folks out there listening and watching who are in similar roles, what are some things that you've kind of taken away from this on how to approach being adaptable to changes that are happening quickly, and how to kind of be flexible around that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something, I think about quite often because, like you said, the landscape keeps changing and we've weathered so many different environments. Um, I think the one thing I've really anchored to or realized is, look, most often or not, when someone is coming to RevOps, there is an issue. It's sort of like when you contact customer support. Like you're not contacting customer support because they're happy. You're contacting them because there's an issue. And I think what that just requires us to always be is to, naturally just be more empathetic because, it's they're in some sort of pain and we are the only solution that they see to help solve them that. And it just means like we need to have the personality of being adaptable. Like, I don't think you're going to succeed in RevOps if you're not adaptable because not only do you have that um, inbound issues coming at you, you also have, the C-suite, the senior leadership team constantly changing the direction of the company. Granted, there's also a lot of factors that they're dealing with and facing and trying to like navigate through that. But ultimately, it's like, hey, once the decision is made, they're coming to you, be like, hey, what do we need to do to change all this and support this? And I would say it's happened to your point a lot more since COVID. I would say I was used to a world where, annual planning was happening once a year, because there was a lot of consistency and, there wasn't that much of a changing environment. Now it's like every quarter there's reforecasting going on because, you know, I've been fortunate, I've been around in companies that are in a dire situation, but I'm sure it's even worse there where, they are literally probably reforecasting every month based on how results went and what they need to do to change, right? And I think the one thing I believe helps you kind of navigate change and um, unplanned scenarios is just having solid scenario planning, right? Like be prepared for the worst case, be prepared for the best case. And it's something that, we try to strive for in our planning process. We're not always best at it, but the thing is when you're kind of planned for the worst case, you know exactly what you need to do. Hey, this is where you need to start. This is where you need to start cutting. Hey, the best case scenario is happening. Okay, cool. Let's go forward with this. So having that wide range of options available to you and your go-to-market exec team, you can navigate anything basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of, what is it? Plan for the worst, hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah,
Yeah, always have kind of an exit hatch,
exactly.
the break this glass if yeah, which, happens a lot lately. So, I know given what we just talked about, how quickly things change, how difficult it is to predict anything.
Yeah.
And this is kind of be a kind of a difficult question, but um, do you see any sort of homeostasis being established where things are starting to kind of slow down a little bit and there's a more obvious way forward,
Yeah.
hopefully lately?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I feel like 2020 was definitely like the roughest year. I think there was a lot of uncertainty. Even, speaking to other fellow RevOps professionals and folks felt the same way. I think, you know, things are tough when CFOs are involved in every deal cycle, right? And I think we are starting to see that a little bit less across the board when I speak to other people too. And I think that's a good sign. I still think 2024 is going to be a tough year for a lot of companies. But I don't want to jinx it, but I do think we are getting to a state of like, I don't think it's gonna be anytime like how it used to be when we had free money. I think people have understood that being profitable is definitely more important than, growing at all costs. But I do think there will be some sort of healthy mix that people are going to strive for where, uh, you know, as long as you're within reach of being profitable, but you're still growing, I think that will probably become like the new norm and like what people strive towards. Because, to my earlier point, you can have a plan that has, hey, plan for being profitable or plan for growth. And depending on how, results come in, you can kind of adjust needed. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I think people were expecting us to go back to normal, which they assumed, the zero interest rate times was normal, and
yes.
it's not, that was the anomaly. This is more like what normal
Yeah.
is. And, it's we can maybe, kind of bemoan the lost the ease of that we
Yeah.
had previously, but I think it's a great opportunity to find individually where our skill, like sharpen our skills, and as companies, a new way forward. There's like if everyone's kind of dealing with the same challenges, then the deck has been reshuffled and you have like a new way forward. That's the way, that's kind of how I've landed on how to deal with everything. Um, so yeah, I mean, as we start to, kind of round out the end of this conversation, um, for the kind of RevOps professional that's listening or watching, what's like a takeaway that you could provide to them that, if they're dealing with some of these challenges, like maybe a takeaway that maybe they could work with when they start work tomorrow that might help them
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah. Good question. I think, you know what, just trust yourself, trust the skill set that you have. Like you've clearly gotten to wherever you are because of you and the skill set you've gained and, lean on your experiences. Like, we all went through probably the craziest 5 years of probably most of our careers with, ups and downs, remote, going from in work to remote, and, lean on those experiences of what you have to do to kind of get to where you are right now. And um, I think, especially for RevOps right now, I think a big challenge right now is obviously resourcing, right? And I think a lot of people are just burnt out. There's just so much work to do, and you don't have the resources that you're used to. And I think it's okay to, like, it's a two-letter word. Just, you got to start saying no. Like, you have to start really prioritizing, like, the value added stuff versus reactive stuff, because otherwise the reactive stuff just takes over. And, then we kind of lose the value of RevOps at any company. And, our goal is make the company more proactive and kind of keep them on path. So, um, leverage the two-letter word no. It's a powerful word, and oftentimes when stakeholders start hearing it, they realize, oh shit, like, it makes them also validate, hey, was this ask really necessary? Because I'm sure many of us have been asked at times, hey, can you run this report for me? And the numbers are never used. They were just curious. And it's like, hey, what are you actually trying to solve here? What's the actual end question? Because I can probably help you with that versus this one-off ask. So I think, given the climate, resource and constraints, just, the environment, just trust yourself, and you got to start prioritizing too. And I think that's key.
Yeah. I think it's for a people pleaser like me that saying no has been a big challenge, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you do it early and often, you kind of establish an expectation where people then will consider twice before asking you, is this really needed? And so that
Exactly.
the amount of times
Yeah.
you have to say no actually decreases over time.
Exactly. I, challenge my team to at least say no once a week, and, myself too. And sometimes it doesn't happen, to your point, like, we are naturally on a team that we are trying to please our customers, which is the internal go-to-market team. But it changes, to your point, like, it makes people think what they're asking for and what the purpose of that ask is. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Before we head out, is there anywhere that the folks at home, the listeners, could learn more about you, about Postscript, on the socials, elsewhere? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, check out Postscript.io. We are an e-commerce brand that does SMS marketing. And then for myself, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, and it was a good chat, and it was great meeting you too.
Yes, you as well.